What do you choose if you don't want a large four-wheel drive SUV, but you still want a vehicle that has decent off-road capability? Well, Subaru reckons it's got the answer. This is the range-topping Subaru Outback Wilderness. And while we think there's probably lots of great reasons why you should consider the Subaru Outback Wilderness, there's probably one main reason which might strike it from your shopping list. So let's take a look at the Wilderness and what it has to offer you and what that number one item might be. The Outback range now starts at around $50,000 before on-road costs, but the Wilderness is right at the top of the lineup. You're looking at just under $60,000 before on-road costs for the standard Wilderness and closer to $63,000 for the Wilderness Apex. And it's got some extra features that help it stand out on the road. It's got this extra cladding as well as the Subaru logo that sits across the front of it. It's different to the standard Outback, which features the regular rondel. Now, it's got obviously this higher ground clearance here. It's 240 millimeters, which is over the standard 220 millimeters offered across the rest of the range. In addition to that greater ground clearance, it's got improved approach and departure angles too. So this is an off-road wagon which is really designed to take you from the city urban environment to some fairly complicated off-road sections. And we actually drove it as part of our test drive on some surprisingly challenging loose surfaces and inclines, and I have to say it has acquitted itself really well. Now, one of the interesting details is that the Outback features an 18-inch alloy wheel across the entire range. But one of the things that's really intriguing about this car is the fact that they've opted for a highway-focused tyre, even though this is an off-road capable vehicle. And what we found is that the tyre has acquitted itself pretty well on loose surfaces, but there's no compromises in terms of how the car drives on-road. So as well as delivering a nice composed ride on-road, it also seems to deliver the goods when it comes to off-road. But Subaru reckons that anybody that chooses the Outback Wilderness may well make some modifications of their own, including choosing a more rugged tyre if they're intending to do some more complicated off-road or longer-term off-road driving. But let's take a look at practicality, because it's one of the things that has made the Outback so popular for so long in Australia. Let's head to the boot and find out about some of the great features that Subaru has included. Now, in terms of the exterior styling, before we get into the boot space, we've got this big chunky bumper, which is terribly popular with modern car designers at the moment. We've got this badging, which is great, really like that. With this gold surround around the reverse lights, I don't think it's necessary, but that's, that's subjective. But overall, I think, this is quite a chunky wagon, and I think that's really going to appeal to buyers. So let's have a look at the practicality of this boot space. So we've got this really nice wide opening. So in terms of being able to stuff loads in the back of this Outback, it is going to deliver in spades from practicality point of view. We've got this practical boot liner here, which stops things from sliding around and also kind of helps with messes and spills. And then there's a lightweight cargo cover here, which will just attach via magnets to cover the loads. And another aspect of this, which is incredibly practical, is it answers the question what you do with your cargo cover. A lot of vehicles come with a hard cargo cover, which you've kind of then got to shove somewhere else. But this will fold up, package up, and can just be popped away. Now, that is a really thoughtful and practical aspect of this vehicle. I really like that. We've also got a whole bunch of different tie-down options. We've got hooks here, and then we've got these tie-down spots as well. So if we've got particular cargo or loads that we need to secure, then we've got all of these options. So, in terms of Subaru really thinking about how people use the Outback, I reckon they've nailed it. There's lots and lots of different options here for people that want to carry gear. One of the other things that they've thought of is how easy it is to fold that second row forward. We've got triggers here, which will fold those seats completely flat. And once you've got those seats folded flat, well, Subaru says you can even fit a double mattress in here, so you can use it for camping trips without having to take a caravan or haul a tent with you. Now, one thing that Subaru gets is the importance of a full-size spare, which is included on the Outback. And that is an incredibly important feature of a car, considering how many vehicles are now moving towards a space-saver spare or maybe an inflator kit. A full-size spare is the way to go. On the interior, it's all about practicality, usability. It's not a luxury vehicle, but there are some fairly hard-wearing finishes, and I think that's what Subaru buyers have been looking for traditionally with the Outback, and they're going to continue to find it in this new model. In terms of technology features, I really like the fact that Subaru has returned to this landscape feature, infotainment screen, and hard buttons for the heating and ventilation. It might seem like something that's straightforward and a bit boring, but actually when your focus is on the road, it's really important to be able to find all of your functions functions really easily and to know where everything is. So I really like that. We've got dual zone climate control up front, which is really important because it's pretty hot today, as well as some features like heated seats, which are available across the new Outback range, and then the steering wheel, which is unique to the higher grade models. It's a nice, comfortable driving position. It's got good bolstering in the seat. This vehicle doesn't have a sunroof. You're going to have to step all the way up to the top of the range if you want a sunroof and also an upgraded Harman Kardon premium sound system. But in terms of all of the gear that you are looking for in something like this, that makes it an easy car to drive, I think the designers have really nailed it with the interior layout of the Outback. It's going to be great for drivers that want to access basic functions but don't need a system which is incredibly overcomplicated, and I really like that in the Outback. So even though we're in a wagon, as you can see, I've got loads of headroom. We're kind of really not compromised, even though we don't have the SUV body style. The front seat is in my regular driver's position, and as you can see, I've got loads of legroom. This is a really nice, spacious second row. We've got heated seats in this model. We've got vents here as well, and like I mentioned up front, we've got these two different charging options. Now, seat is pretty comfortable for second row passengers. We've got this nice bolstering, which is very supportive, particularly on a long journey. We've sat in this car for about an hour and a half this morning, and it definitely gives some good support.
However, while you can adjust the angle of the seat back, it's a fiddly operation which involves this pull cable here. I'd much prefer there to be a latch at the top of the seat as seen in most vehicles. That's much easier to operate.
There's a couple of options when it comes to the interior. This one is a leather appointed upholstery, but there's also a technical fabric which is basically waterproof, which you might opt for if you've got a lot of dogs or wet children getting into the car regularly.
On this loose surface, well, the Outback acquits itself really well. Even though we've got these highway and terrain tyres on, the ride is pretty smooth, and that's thanks largely to the active dampers that are fitted on this car. On this loose surface, we don't have X mode activated at the moment. We don't need to, it's not that loose, but the car is driving really nicely. Even with the highway tyres on, it's still managing its grip really well. A couple of engine options in the range. This one is the 2.4 litre turbo engine, and it's fitted exclusively to the Wilderness models. There's also a normally aspirated 2.5 litre engine. Both engines are paired with a CVT. I have to say the performance of the CVT has been impressive in both models. It really helps to deliver power. It does show up a little bit in the 2.5 litre aspirated engine. It just doesn't have the wallop that we get from the turbo in terms of the power delivery, so you do kind of have to use the manual shifters to shift down to give yourself a little bit of extra oomph when overtaking. But largely in both vehicles, particularly this Wilderness that we're driving here, the engine and the transmission combination is really very convincing, and yeah, it's definitely something that's impressed me about driving the Outback. Now, X mode's available across the range. In this Wilderness model, we also get extra mud and snow mode as well, and that just helps to manage the traction on loose surfaces. And it also enables things like hill descent control, which is an incredibly useful function for people that perhaps aren't that confident doing a lot of off-road driving and really want the car to do a lot of the work. Something else which is pretty impressive is that the active dampers do a good job of evening out the ride. I have to say the car fully loaded probably does ride a little bit better. There's a little bit less lateral movement, but this is definitely more akin to driving a car than it is a four-wheel drive SUV. This is an all-wheel drive car rather than, you know, something that's got a fairly complicated four-wheel drive system going on. And that really translates to an easier drive on the road and a more comfortable ride for both the driver and the passengers. What's the one area where the Subaru Outback Wilderness is really compromised? I know you've been waiting. We started at the beginning of the video with a promise of that one reason. It's the reduced towing capacity. In this vehicle, due to its extra weight and probably due to its extra ground clearance and some of that suspension stuff that's going on with the adaptive dampers, there is a reduction in its towing capacity. So while the rest of the range has an unbraked towing capacity of 2,400 kilos, in the Wilderness model, it's 2,100 kilos. And that might make a bit of a difference for you. It's obviously enough to tow a trailer to the tip or even a small camper trailer. But Australians do like a car that tows. So if you're thinking of something that really wants to push to higher towing capacity, then you may well be looking either at a lower grade Outback or even moving up into one of those four-wheel drive SUVs. But overall, does the Outback acquit itself well? I think it really does. There's a couple of options. This one, obviously, we're focusing on the Wilderness top spec here, but even elsewhere in the range, the entry-level model, I think it's really going to deliver for Outback drivers that want something which is a comfortable car for everyday use, but can also tackle roads like this one. This one's an unsealed gravel road, but with some level of comfort, whether you're in the front or whether you're in the second row. Does it present as a valuable alternative to a four-wheel drive SUV? Well, I reckon it does. A lot of times I don't really think that you need a great big Everest or a Prado, and something like this practical Outback, which, you know, arguably has just as much room for lugging loads and carrying rear seat passengers as a larger SUV. For people that just don't want to drive a big four-wheel drive SUV as their everyday vehicle, this Outback really is going to hit the mark. It's not the most powerful machine in that base spec with the entry-level engine, but it doesn't need to be. Honestly, it's incredibly capable. It's got power when you need it. You just have to manage that. This turbo one does do everything that you want. I think that the fuel economy is, you know, has been okay considering the kind of driving that we're doing. It's not a clever system like a hybrid, but it does deliver for Australian buyers. And I think if you're a Subaru Tragic, or if you've owned an Outback for a while, then I don't think that towing capacity loss is enough of a compromise to rule it out. If you've been considering the new Outback, there's so much to like about it. The practicality, the packaging, the way that it drives on-road and off-road. I think they really have put together a great package for Australian buyers that just don't want to move up to a larger diesel four-wheel drive SUV.
So should you buy the Subaru Outback Wilderness? Well, I definitely think Subaru's got it nailed when it comes to its practicality and its packaging. And I really like the exterior design, even though some people might find it a little bit polarizing. However, the compromise on the towing may be the big factor that has you say, the Subaru Outback Wilderness is probably not the car for me. 2,100 kilos is plenty for a small trailer or even a little camper tent, but if you're thinking about towing anything a little bit bigger, then you may well be considering actually moving up to a larger SUV. But in terms of what the Outback Wilderness has to offer, I think it has delivered in spades. It's an excellent vehicle and something that Australian buyers should definitely take a look at.
If you're looking for your next car, you can research and compare running costs, features and specs, and view loan options at RACV CarMatch.